Hey everyone, Carmichael here, founder of Cathartic Clarity. Today I'm thrilled to share a special exercise that I adapted from insights by an artist, poet, and coach, Adam Roa. I'll put his information in the description below. This exercise perfectly aligns with our community's focus on intuition and AI-driven transformation. I took what he shared and I adapted it by creating an opportunity to get some extra insight by using ChatGPT. Let's dive in. First thing you're going to need is a pen and paper. While you go grab that, I'm going to navigate to the mission that I've created here in our community. So I'm calling this the happiness grid. The first thing you're going to do is draw a horizontal line and put evenly spaced markings along the bottom. Doesn't have to be perfect, just enough to give you an idea. And I like to label them for about every 5 years of my life. Another member in my community had put the calendar year for each hash mark because that was how they were more able to tap into and recall what their happiness was at different points in their life. On the vertical axis, you're going to make evenly spaced hash marks. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. And you're going to label them from 0 to 10. Now, here's an important part. Let's take a minute and take a breath. Sort of relax a little bit. Feel into what your general happiness level was around that age and put a dot on a scale of 0 to 10 on what that happiness generally was. Then you're going to repeat that process all down the line. If you have to put a dot in between the lines, that's okay. You see here between 10 and 15, there was an extra dot thrown in here just to reflect a more complete picture. Once you're finished with the dots, you're going to then connect the dots with lines going from left to right. Adam Roa, where I got this from, suggested that we think about the dots as a story and the lines as the lessons in between the stories. These lessons that represent something we learned along the way or transitions that might be useful for ourselves or other people to hear about and learn from. Once your grid is finished, just take a step back from it and just look at overall, what were the peaks, what were the valleys? Think about what was happening at different times. Was it a turning point? Was it based on a decision you made or just something that was happening in the world? Jot down a few notes or look for different themes that might have been influencing your level of happiness at different stages in your life. You also might want to think about what you learned from these experiences. What did they teach you? How did they shape the person you became today? And how might these stories be useful for somebody else? If you're a content creator, you have a personal brand, or maybe you're a life coach, these can be useful storytelling tools. Share your story with friends, family, or even with us here. Stories have a unique and powerful way of connecting us. And your story is uniquely powerful. Again, take a moment and just appreciate your journey. What surprises you about your timeline? And what insights have you gained? Next, what I'm going to ask you to do is take a picture of your grid, and we're going to share that in ChatGPT, and we're going to see what insights or reflections it might have for us to consider that maybe we haven't yet. So we open our ChatGPT window, and we paste in a copy of our happiness grid. And then we're just going to ask it. I did an exercise where I plotted my happiness over time. Here's a picture of mine. What stands out as interesting or significant? Let's see what it has to say. Calling out the fluctuations. My happiness seemed to have fluctuated quite frequently, taking multiple peaks and valleys rather than a smooth trend over time. There were sharp spikes around 35 and 60. There were dips along the way. The overall range seems to be between 3 and 7. And it's noticing that there's a consistency in later life, that it stabilizes suggesting a more steady or predictable emotional state during that period. So that's kind of interesting. Next, just keep having a conversation with it. So here's another prompt we could try. Assuming the age axis had a start date of, and then you would put your birthday in there, what insights might that bring into the story? I'm going to make up a date. Using that as a start date, this adds an additional layer of insight. So early ages shows some moderate fluctuations. Young adulthood, midlife, late adulthood. So my next question, assuming the person lived in your country of origin, so I'm going to put United States because different things happen in different countries in different years. So were there any world events or sociological perspectives that could potentially influence the level of happiness in various years? Let's see what that has for us. So the Vietnam War was going on in my 0 to 15 years, Watergate, economic recession, cultural shifts, end of the Cold War, the AIDS epidemic, the 80s economic boom, 9/11, of course, the financial crisis, Great Recession aftermath, technological revolution, COVID, political polarization. Oh, this is interesting. Anticipated events. If the happiness spike at age 60, which is actually age 55, but that's okay, represents something you foresee, it could correlate with expected retirement, personal fulfillment, or new opportunities. Well, that's interesting because I ended up quitting my accounting career in April 2024, so I wouldn't necessarily consider myself retired, and I don't necessarily think about myself as really ever retiring. I quit so that I could start this online community, Cathartic Clarity. I was very much ready to start sharing more of myself in the world in a very meaningful way that could help others create meaningful lives for themselves using their intuition and simple AI tools. All right, so then I've got one more prompt here I want to share, and then we'll be done. So this prompt says, if you were to create a storyline for a main character of a novel based on this graph, what might that story be? Assume the character's name is, and add a name that you like. I'm going to say Sadie. Write it in first person, reflecting on the story of their life. The peaks and valleys of Sadie's life. Looking back at my life, I often think like the line graph I once drew, plotting my happiness across the years. It wasn't smooth. Interesting. You know, it's just fun, and you can keep having a conversation, and you could even say, based on this, what might some options be for Sadie at this point? I don't know. Just sort of play around and see what you find. So as we wrap up, I just wanted to add one little side note on the topic of subjectivity. So as you're pondering your happiness grid, keep in mind that the peaks and valleys that you plotted are based on your personal perception and experiences. The same event could be interpreted differently by someone else due to differences in mindset, personality, temperament, or life circumstances. What might be a high point for you could be less significant to another, and vice versa. So this exercise is valuable not just for mapping out your own happiness, but also understanding how you assign meaning to different events in your life. By recognizing the values and emotions that you attach to experiences, you can begin to see how your internal narrative shapes your outlook and your experiences. The real power here lies in gaining clarity about your mindset over time. This understanding can give you greater autonomy over the stories that you tell yourself about events that happen. It's not just about what happens to you, but how you interpret and respond to these happenings that shape your emotional journey. So use this as an opportunity to explore how you internalize experiences, as well as how these inner narratives impact your happiness. This awareness can be a powerful tool for personal growth and emotional resilience. So that's what I have for you today. Good luck with everything. Let me know how it goes, and I will see you next time.